Welcome back to A Moment in History. I'm Seth Udinsky. Well, the Western Hemisphere was in many ways kind of the last frontier of exploration during the end of the medieval world and then into the age of exploration in the 1500s. Now, of course, for many, the Western Hemisphere at that time, as we understand it, was not even a thing, since most of the people at that time were of the belief that the nearest landmass to the Atlantic coast of Europe was the Pacific coast of Asia. But when Christopher Columbus and many European explorers who followed him discovered a whole new continent between Western Europe and East Asia, they also discovered many ancient pagan tribes. One of these tribes, perhaps the most famous of pre-European America, was the dominant force in Central America, a mighty state that propagated the worship of a pantheon of gods and often partook in the egregious act of child sacrifice. These were the Aztecs. Now, the Aztecs had likely been a dominant force in the High Middle Ages in Mesoamerica, but their early history is really lost to us. We get a much clearer picture of their history in the year 1328 when the capital city of Tenochtitlan was founded, which stood where the current capital of Mexico, that's Mexico City, now stands today. For the next 200 years, the empire absorbed other neighboring tribes and grew to encompass several million people, with roughly 140,000 people living in its capital city at its height. Now, the Aztecs worshipped a plethora of pagan demon gods, as we said earlier, and core to their religious practices was the profane ritual of human sacrifices, where the Aztecs would seek to appease these gods by cutting the hearts out of their victims, sometimes this would be children, keep in mind, and spilling the blood on the ritual altar. Now, unbeknownst to the Aztecs and their famed Emperor Montezuma, a band of explorers from across the sea to the east, the Spanish conquistadors, were on their way. In 1519, the Christian conquistadors, led by the Spanish warlord Hernán Cortés, waged war on the pagans. With an army of only a few hundred men up against several 100,000 Aztec warriors, Cortés and the Spaniards nonetheless still conquered the Aztecs with the help of several key allies. Now, the first ally was weaponry. The Spanish explorers, who were trained military knights as they were, also had the distinct advantage of iron swords, strong plate armor, and perhaps most important, the newly invented muskets and cannons at their disposal, while the Aztecs were very much an ancient military force, using the bow and arrow and the spear with limited protection on their bodies. Now, the second was disease, particularly smallpox. The Spaniards were largely immune to the sicknesses of Europe, while the Aztecs were not. Thousands of Aztecs were obliterated by diseases that barely harmed the conquistadors, if at all. And finally, the third ally came in the form of other tribes. The Spaniards were able to rally neighboring tribes who hated the Aztecs against the Aztecs, giving Cortés and his men a key assist on unfriendly turf. The Spaniards obliterated the Aztecs and set up a key point of the Spanish New World Empire, which would last for the next few hundred years. Thanks so much for joining me once again for A Moment in History.